Hello, this is a proof of concept run for the Office 365 Phish, which will take the bad actor and they will create a Power App with an embedded Power Automate workflow, and that workflow will basically be run with SharePoint Actions under the context of the target user, whoever opens the Power App. In this case, it is this on the right-hand side user, the site owner. And the site owner will be granting the bad actor permissions to not only their OneDrive as a site collection administrator and also with full control over their site, but also any other SharePoint sites that this site owner also has full control over, with site collection administrative permissions being shared as well if possible. So I have a couple tabs open here. The first one is the permissions for the site owner on their OneDrive. So as you can see, the bad actor is not here listed with full control. And for site collection administrators, the bad actor is not here as well. Same thing on this site. So this is an example of just a SharePoint site. The bad actor is not here, as well as the site collection administrator and also as full control. This site is just the default site behavior when a user creates a Microsoft team. That team creates the Files tab and a SharePoint site behind the scenes where these documents are actually stored. So that is what this site is here, the site owner private team, And there's also one more site as a test that is just a test communication site. This site owner does not have SCA or site collection administrative permissions on this site. However, they are listed as an owner, as if maybe they're helping to manage permissions, or just listed as an owner on this site. The site owner is right here. So the bad actor is not on this site as well. So here, basically what happens is the bad actor has a Power App, and that Power App will just have an onStart property that executes this workflow, just kicks it off, and the parameters are the user email of whoever is opening this Power App. So in this case, it will be siteowner@ptarget.microsoft.com. And then the second parameter is a regular expression that extracts the domain, which will be ptarget. Now this is used to kind of build out the ptarget.sharepoint.com, so the SharePoint as well as the OneDrive right here URLs. And yeah, that's basically what they're there for. So getting into the proof of concept, just to show how it gets executed. So this link right here is just a link to the app, and maybe they send, the bad actor will send to the site owner just like, hey, I heard you're really good with Power Apps, can you help me with this? Does this look okay to you? Somehow they social engineer just this person to open the app, and that's it. That's all that needs to happen. The site owner just opened the app, and everything has already gotten kicked off. Now, the one thing that I should note here is the permissions page. So I've already opened and tested here, but typically you'll get hit with this permissions page here for the first time opening the app. And this is totally non-suspect. This is totally normal for anyone that's opened a Power App that is connected to a SharePoint list. So you just see that, hey, this app needs permissions to connect to SharePoint. And if you click on View Permissions, that's what this screenshot is down here. Even the View Permissions detail does not show anything here in the 3 bullets about modifying permissions, granting permissions to anyone, or even touching your OneDrive at all. However, OneDrive is a personal SharePoint site, so we can grant the bad actor permissions to that OneDrive data. So if we go into the execution of this flow, we can see that as of 1 minute ago, it was run and it succeeded. So here, if I go back to this OneDrive, I can refresh, and the bad actor is now full control on this OneDrive. Also, the bad actor is a site collection administrator on the OneDrive, and if you were to look in audit logs, you would see that the site owner is the one that did this. They added the bad actor to these permissions. Also, if I refresh the page on this site collection as well, that's tied to the team. The bad actor has full control here. The bad actor is also now on the permissions here as a site collection administrator. Again, the site owner in the audit logs will show that he is the person that did that. And then if I refresh the page here for just that site where the site owner has full control as an owner in the default owners group, the bad actor is now here with full control. However, they do not have site collection administrator. As you can see, I'm the bad actor. I can access this page now, and I don't see site collection administrator. So they only have full control to the site, which is still enough to read the data and all that stuff that they probably shouldn't have access to. If I dig down into why this is happening and how it works, I will just kind of show some of that. So this is the workflow logic, and essentially at the very beginning it's instantiating a bunch of variables. So if I just open these up, we'll just see that as described before, the runner email, this is just the first parameter in the Power App, and then this is the domain, is the second parameter. And I just set variables here just so that way it's a little bit easier to read moving forward. But again, here is just where you just define these, and these are values that are already in Power Apps, and you'll just get them based on whoever's logged in. In this case, it was the site owner. This right here, attacker email. So this is what needs to be manually changed by whoever builds from this template zip file or imports this flow. This is basically who is just going to be getting the permissions. So in this case, it's the bad actor at ptarget.onmicrosoft.com, and it would just have to be updated for whoever's the bad actor in this case. And moving forward, the victim OneDrive URL is just going to concatenate some of those values that were passed in as parameters, so the domain, as well as the replacing of the email address with the @ and periods to an underscore. So in addition, I think commas and spaces also need to be replaced. This is just a basic test. However, they're just building the OneDrive URL for the tenant structure. And since this is an insider Phish, this can obviously be updated to match whatever tenant's needs, specific configurations. So the OneDrive URLs, this is going to be the array of URLs of SharePoint sites that we will attempt to grant permissions to. And right now, I have this function here that just creates a blank array from the OneDrive URL right here. And then the second parameter, the second item in this array is actually going to be this site. You don't need that there. I just have it here because my method of collecting sites relies on the search index, and I just created this site. It's not in the search index yet, but in theory I don't need that there at all. And it's just there for this proof of concept right now. I'll remove it in the zip file that I deliver. So right here is just a role ID, which will be set later, and that will be the role ID for the specific site for full control, but we'll get there. The next thing is to collect the URLs. So now that I have all the variables set up, I'm going to actually have the site owner, or whoever opens the Power App, so in this case it's the site owner, they will issue a command to, and again we see here the domain, .sharepoint.com. They're going to issue a command to the search query for SharePoint, and it's going to be pulling back all of the STS site collections that they see in the search query. So that's in the search index. So again, just to remind you, the search is security trimmed. So it basically any site that is indexed where the index is not disabled, as well as this site owner has view permissions to, is going to be shown in the results of this. And in my testing, I see that the max row limit is 500. However, if you have more than 500 sites, which obviously is very much could be the case, whoever is the bad actor in this case can just implement pagination, and that's just all SharePoint query stuff. So yeah, this can just be changed and modified for that to account for it. Or they could pull all the, if they happen to know some sensitive URLs or target URLs that they want to target, they can hard code the URLs and the sites, kind of similar to how I just hard-coded this testcom site 1 and the OneDrive URL here, they can also do that as an option too, to kind of quiet their footprint in the logs. Yeah, so moving forward, this compose is just a debug statement pretty much, just to show me what the results were. But once you pull back all of the URLs, it's going to append those URLs to this URL array parameter. And once you have the list of URLs, then down here we will iterate through every single site and try to grant those permissions. Now, if I look at right above and below, I have these output and print output statements. So this is just my attempt to collect all of the sites that I will successfully grant permissions to, and then I will display them at the end just to have them collected. I can just view all of the ones that succeeded. And if I look at my successful run here and just refresh what this looked like when it ran 7 minutes ago, when I demonstrated this, and if I were to scroll all the way to the bottom, I can see that the output for these are the OneDrive of the site owner, the testcom site 1, the site owner private team, and I append the permissions URL, and then I also append like a hash sign as well as full control or FCA, depending on what permissions I had successfully set in that instance. And if the bad actor in this case had the permissions to create like a SharePoint site, they can always make that site public, remove it from the index, and then just have like create item in SharePoint list down here. So that way the site owner, when they run this workflow, grants permissions and then dumps that data out to a SharePoint list that the bad actor can just then access and see all of the places that they have access to if they maybe phish like several employees. And they wouldn't have to come in here and click into each individual workflow run. And then again, if I just take like one of these URLs, it should just take me directly to the user.aspx right here, so the permissions page of this site. So this, in this case, it's the OneDrive of site owner, which is this user again on the right, and I can see that the bad actor is right here. And again, if I just go into the documents, I can see that they have access to this test OneDrive doc that's modified by site owner. It's in the site owner's OneDrive right here. So just moving forward, right here, that's for the output, and for each site, this is where we get into the meat of how we are actually assigning permissions. So the goal here is to first get the roles of the site. So we do that with the SharePoint endpoint for role definitions, and for all the role definitions, this URL is just a debug statement to print which URL we're in, but for each role, we're going to iterate and look for the one that is full control here. And if it is equal to full control, we set the variable of role ID to that role ID. So each site will have its own list of permissions, and we're just looking for the one with full control and setting it here. And then we will use that to grant permissions later. Next, we need to run ensure user, and ensure user is used by the SharePoint API to make sure that a specific user exists in the site, because each user profile is basically copied into the user information table. So ensure user just makes sure that our malicious bad actor, the attacker email, is on the site collection, so that way we can assign permissions to them. So we add the user to the site if they don't exist with the ensure user. Then we get that user right here with another query to /web/site users, where we're filtering by the user principal name of the attacker email. So now we have the record in that specific site for the attacker email, and in each site the attacker email's ID will be different, again from that user information table. And given the user ID here, which is was output above here, this is just printing out what it is currently. It's for debugging and when you run the workflow. Then right here we add that attacker email with full control. So this is where we add full control with the role assignments endpoint, where the principal ID is that user ID. the attacker email for this particular site, and the role definition ID is the role ID for that full control permission. So now the user, the bad actor, has been granted full control to that site by the site owner, because these SharePoint actions in Microsoft Flow are being executed in the context of whoever triggered the workflow, which in this case is the site owner. They're the one that opened the app and triggered up here through Power Apps this workflow. So then here we just so we add full control. Then here I just have the configure run after to only if it's successful, to setting the output variable and appending the current URL with the URL for the permissions page of that site, as well as hashtag full control. And then we do the same for the site collection administrator here. This is configured to run after the full control output is either successful or skipped, like if this one failed. And I should also mention for both of these, for the site collection administrator and for the full control, for the purposes of this, I went into settings and set the retry policy to none to make sure that it just works fast. If it fails, it doesn't keep trying to retry. But in a different environment, you would probably want to retry at least a couple times. And here, we grant site collection administrator. So again, the site user is making this request where we get the user by ID. Again, we get by the user ID, the malicious user, and then we set is site admin is true. And this will work if the site owner is the site collection administrator of the site, which is the default for modern team sites. Again, when you create a team site, whoever creates it, and all owners of this Office 365 group are by default site collection administrators of this SharePoint site. So they do have permissions to share in that manner. So then we set the bad actor to have site collection administrator on this content as well. Then it just loops through for each site, and this is all run in series again, so I have not configured concurrency here. This all runs in series in order to make sure that this variable is set properly and everything. So this is actually, I'll explain everything else. I think I got through the basics, but I think this demonstrates the proof of concept, and I'll go into more detail in my write-up as well, just with like documentation for like ensure user and such. So thank you, and that's it.